3 supers in under a minute? What the f?
If you've been following me for a decent amount of time, you'd know that I have been a big Arc Warlock enjoyer. Playing Arc Warlock is like piloting Raiden from Mortal Kombat, but with the power of Sub-Zero Slide, so you just slide around electrocuting motherfuckers. Anyway, I'm trailing off. So, when Bungie released a new Arc aspect for Warlocks, and a good-looking one at that, naturally I had to try it and see if it can actually make Arc Warlock viable, because in the current landscape, Prismatic Arc Warlock had everything normal Arc did, but better. So this new aspect needed to do something very, very dumb in the sandbox, and boy, is it ever dumb. So stupid that it would probably make Patrick Star blush. The Ionic Sentry aspect states, defeat targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities to charge up an arc turret that periodically changes lightning between nearby targets, granting a stack of bull charge with each hit. And you can press your grenade button to deploy the Ionic Sentry, blinding nearby targets on initial impact. So essentially, you get an Arc Buddy, like you would with Arc Souls, except it took several rounds of steroids and decided to just destroy everything. So we're going to cater our entire build around this new aspect, and the first thing we're going to do is pair it with a second aspect, and there is no better one to pair it with here than Electrostatic Mind, which states, defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. Collecting an Ionic Trace makes you amplified. Additionally, Ionic Traces themselves also give you back ability energy, including your super. Speaking of your super, we're going to try out the newly buffed Chaos Reach and see if it's actually worth running in the year 2025, because the last 3-4 years, not so much. And while we're going down the path of Chaos Reach, I know you know the exotic that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be Geomag Stabilizers, which also got buffed when Heresy launched. Now Chaos Reach states, damaging targets with Chaos Reach extends its duration, which it used to do already. Collecting Ionic Traces gives you energy for Chaos Reach, and sprinting while near max bull charge stacks will grant stacks over time. Lastly, what exotic weapon could we use with this build? And fun fact, the weapon I'm going to talk about, I have not fired a single time before this episode other than obtaining its catalyst. That exotic is going to be Delicate Tomb. So there's 2 reasons why this weapon is nuts right now. One, it makes Ionic Traces. Specifically, when you make final blows with this weapon, they can generate Ionic Traces. The other reason is, it's a fusion rifle. And this episode, we have Particle Reconstruction, which basically pumps fusion rifles to the moon in terms of damage. And of course, it is an arc weapon, given that it makes Ionic Traces, so it just flows with the rest of the build as well. Now about that build, we already covered the aspects, let's go over the rest of the kit. So our super, as I mentioned, is Chaos Reach. For our abilities, we're going to be rocking standard Healing Rift. Then in our melee slot, you can run whatever. I personally like Chain Lightning. And then in the grenade slot, I personally go with Pulse Grenade, but again, you can go with whatever you would like. For the fragments, the first one is Spark of Frequency. Melee hits increase your equipped weapon's reload speed and stability, which is fine. But also, while amplified, those effects are increased, and you gain increased stacks of Bolt Charge from all sources. Number 2, Spark of Discharge. Arc weapon final blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace, and collecting an Ionic Trace grants you a stack of Bolt Charge. Number 3, Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. More DR is always helpful. And number 4 is Spark of Ions. Defeating a jolted target or defeating a target with Bolt Charge creates an Ionic Trace. So basically, the identity of the build is to create as much Ionic Trace as humanly possible in the quickest amount of time. Get your super, use your super, defeat a bunch of stuff, and then rinse repeat to get it back within a matter of seconds. And don't forget, you're also having stacks of Bolt Charge go off, so that's basically having a free electric ignition every once in a while onto any enemy that you want. And with that in mind, I decided to put an Arc Heavy on as well. In this case, it's going to be Half Truths for 2 reasons. 1, it's Arc, and 2, Eager Edge. I like just zooming around the map and collecting anything I need to collect, and also just getting to any enemy wave that I want in a quick fashion. So let's say I throw an Ionic Sentry across the map to kill and blind a bunch of stuff. I can then use an Eager Sword to get there immediately and just pick up the Ionic Traces instantly instead of waiting for them to come to me. However, if you don't want to have the same weapons on, for example, if you don't have Delicate Tomb or you just don't like it for some reason, there are other options too. There's the Indebted Kindness Rocket Sidearm from Warlord's Ruin. There's obviously the obvious one, Thunderlord in the heavy slot. It's a machine gun. It just clears everything non-stop. That's a big one. Or just any arc weapon that you may have in your inventory if you're like a new player and you don't have any of the things that I just mentioned. Now, as for the gameplay loop, the first thing you typically want to be doing is going with an ability into any wave, because this will instantly proc Electrostatic Mind, which in turn gives you an Ionic Trace and also makes you amplified. And when you're amplified, you get increased stacks of Bolt Charge from all sources. Then collecting an Ionic Trace also gives you a stack of Bolt Charge. And if you use, let's say, your melee ability, that will proc a Jolt, which then procs Spark of Ions, which then gives you an Ionic Trace to get more ability energy back. In any case, you will very quickly build up a full sentry, and then you can fire it ready to go to blind anything on impact, and to slowly eliminate everything with mini lightning strikes. And next thing you know it, you will have a full super to use Chaos Reach. Go ahead and use it on anything you want. It'll pretty much kill everything in one single room besides a boss. It'll create a bunch of Ionic Traces, and then you rinse repeat the process to get your super back in like another 20 seconds. And don't forget, in the middle of all of this, Spark of Discharge can also be making Ionic Traces for you, just with Arc Weapon Final Blows, so be sure to use your energy and your heavy weapon accordingly. With that out of the way, let's talk about armor mods. For the artifact, there's 4 mods that are particularly helpful. Number 1 is going to be Dreadful Finisher. Essentially, any orange bar and yellow bar you can finish, you can make free green ammo off of, so why wouldn't you want free ammo, right? So if you're rocking Delicate Tomb, Indebted Kindness, anything like that, this is really helpful. The next mod is going to be Flashover. When you gain maximum stacks of Bolt Charge, you also become amplified, so another way to become amped, and also the Lightning Bolts deal more damage, so it's literally free damage. Next is Particle Reconstruction. We talked about this earlier. If you're rocking a fusion rifle, there's no reason why you shouldn't have this on at all. And lastly, we have Defibrillating Blast, the worst worded artifact perk ever, quite possibly. Basically, ignore what it says. Essentially, all you need to know is that if you create a Bolt Charge, you will then get healed. That's the big selling point of this. And also, you know, it jolts targets, which is also good, but the healing is the main part that we want. As for the actual armor mods, let's start with the helmet. First, we have a copy of Hands On. You gain bonus super energy on melee kills. You'll do that a lot. Then you have Harmonic Siphon to create orbs to pick up for your super, pretty standard. And lastly, Dynamo, reduce super cooldown when using your class ability near targets, which is your Rift, which again, you should utilize every time you're near enemies and aren't going to get one shot. Then in our gloves, we have 1 copy of Harmonic Loader, pretty self-explanatory. 1 copy of Focusing Strike, you gain class ability energy when you cause damage with a powered melee attack, you will do that all the time. And then 1 copy of Bolstering Detonation, you get class ability energy when you cause damage with a grenade. Again, you'll do that all the time. In the chest, it's pretty straightforward. 1 solar resist, 1 void resist, 1 arc resist. You can have whatever you want in the chest. I personally just like resist for most content in the game. In our Geomags, we have 1 copy of Recuperation to replenish health each time we pick up an orb, 1 copy of Absolution to reduce all ability cooldowns each time we get an orb, and lastly, 1 copy of Arc Weapon Surge. I just threw this in there because at least our weapons get a little bit of extra damage when we're using them, right? And then in our class item, we have 1 copy of Outreach to reduce melee cooldown when we use our Rift, 1 copy of Distribution to reduce all ability cooldowns when we use our Rift, and lastly, 1 copy of Powerful Attraction for picking up orbs when we do place our Rift down. There's typically going to be orbs around you if you're using your abilities non-stop. And that's it for the build. Unironically, I think this is one of the best builds you could run this season just for the insane power creep it currently has with Ionic Sentry, so I highly recommend you test it out if you are a Warlock main. And who knows, we still have 2 more full slots of artifact mods to come for Act 2 and Act 3. It could get even crazier from here. As always, I'll put a dim link down below in the description if you want to try this out on your own. In the meantime, if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and is much appreciated. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or a comment below as well. If you don't know what to leave as a comment, you can leave Chaos Reach as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.